Now, I just want to emphasize on this a little bit more. And the reason why I wanted this conversation is we've seen during the pandemic, organizations have shifted their operating model to working remotely. This has risen the number of data breaches. Now, just to put that into context, we're talking about 8.4 billion records that have been exposed in Q1 of 2020. Now, if you want to break that down a little bit more, July 2020 alone reached about 77 million records, and that's in about 86 incidents. Now, that number is an increase of 276% in comparison to the first half of 2019. Now, just to elaborate a little bit more there, the top 5 largest data breach in 2020 was Twitter, where they had up to about 130 high-profile celebrity profiles hacked, including Elon Musk. Then you had Marriott Hotels, which was more than 5.2 million guests. If you accumulate that with their previous data breach, which was back in 2018, you're talking about 500 million. Number 3 to that is MGM, where people took personal details of about 10 million hotel guests again. That's nearly 142 million from a previous hack that they had. And we all knew about Zoom, which was about 500,000 stolen passwords and sold on the dark web forums. And lastly, Agilent Health, which is a healthcare giant, and they had something like 350,000 patient records which were hacked. So the question every business and every nation should be asking itself is, how safe is your organization and your data security from threats? So I could only think of bringing Jackie, the leading expert, on this conversation. Jackie, thank you so much for taking time out your day to speak with our audience and to speak with me. You have a very fruitful background. Is there any way we can consolidate that in a few words?
Well, the tricky one, I'm an expert advisor to the G20, where we've looked at the way in which the digital economies will need to go forward, what's reset look like, and also as a result of that work, an expert advisor to the United Nations. So when I look at when I talk about what I talk about today, I am including all 180 nations in this. And obviously there's a spectrum at play here, but this pandemic has demonstrated never seen before cooperation, not just across nations and our economies, but across our organizations. Any part of the value chain that your organization sits in, you've been called on to help deliver a response to this pandemic, but so have the cyber criminals. And what Kay's talking about is the work from home became the norm for over 1 billion people across the world. And the most well-prepared cohort for that change were the criminals. The cyber criminals already work online, and every nation has struggled with this phenomenon. I mean, Kate called out specific statistics and particular companies, but everyone has struggled. And in this pre-vaccine stage, from a cyber point of view, as a cyber specialist, I look at this as a 0-day exploit across the whole world. We're used to talking about cyber in a company, perhaps a bank attack, a national bank attack, but this is a 0-day exploit across the world. But the biggest cyber risk now, and I'm not sure any of the things I say will be what you're hearing in your boardrooms. And if that's the case, great, because I actually want to be that new conversation that's interrupting what's being said. Because the biggest cyber risk I'm seeing across the world right now is people. And that means we need a different focus to what we mean by cyber. It means strengthening teams, collaboration, not just across organizations, but those supply chains that we've talked about, hiring and managing virtually for the foreseeable future. And essentially this isolation economy that has developed on the back of the pandemic has created what I'm talking to boards about as a new social contract between our organizations, our supply chains, our nations, predominantly online. So if this is bad news for you now, I'm very sorry about this, but work from home is a reality for our future. Until we have a vaccine, that's the likely state of that. But I do want to say one thing though. Nation states, as much as I do what I do and the rest of the countries in the United Nations are collaborating, we can't drive the sort of collaboration I'm talking about to address these new cyber risks. But organizations like yours can, supply chains like yours can. But the key thing is tech's the driver for all our organizations now, because it's actually making everybody vulnerable whilst delivering the answer. And cyber is an operational risk for everyone now. And I say that without any exceptions. And a cybersecurity revival is what I'm talking to you about today.